continue working with this document. So the goal is to achieve a fully styled, properly formatted document. So we will use different features and methods in LibreOffice. So that will be a bit of a review, but I will also use a few things I haven't talked about before. For example, we will focus on styling tables. And there will be a couple of other things. Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do, and that's something that I forgot to do previously, although I mentioned it. I've got this title page. So this is the first page of the document. I've also applied this first page style. We're talking about page styles, of course. And I've also disabled page numbering. Or actually, in fact, this is the setting in this first page style. So you can see here, page numbers, none. So this is turned off for this style. And this is also a title page. So LibreOffice knows that this is the title page. And actually we have some special settings for the title page. So here we have the entry for page, but below we have some settings for the title page. So if I click on that, you can see that I've got some settings here. For example, we can add some more title pages, and we've also got this setting. So if I cancel this for a moment, so this is what I mentioned previously. You can see that the page number doesn't show up on the first page, but on the next page we've got number 2, right? And often we don't want to number the title page. We want to start with the content. So with this table of contents, or maybe even with proper content, right? So the content shouldn't really start at page 3, but perhaps it should start at page 1. So what we're going to do is to change those settings for the first page, for the title page. So I'm going to go to title page, and here you've got this option, reset page numbering after title pages. And we're starting with page number 1. Okay. So you can see that now we have number 1 here, not number 2. And if I update this table of contents, so I right click and update index, you can see that now it's changed. So we're starting at page 2. Now we could also change the settings of this page so that it doesn't have numbering either. So we could actually start with the next page, which is proper content. However, we would need to convert this page to a title page. So let's do that. So what we need to do is to have 2 of those title pages. So we can go to title page again. And here we've got these 2 options. Converting existing pages to title pages and insert new title pages. So of course we want to convert this second page into a title page. And we want to have one title page, one extra title page. So this may be a little confusing because you might think that you need to change this to 2. But this will actually insert or convert this page. It will not just set the number of pages to 2 for the document. So if I change this to 2, it will actually add 2 pages or convert 2 following pages to title pages. So we have to stay with 1, and we place it at page 2 because we want to convert page 2 to a title page. And of course we leave this setting on because we want to reset page numbering after title pages. Okay. So now we can see that we've got page number 1 here, where the actual content starts. So we can also update the index, and we can see that our content starts at page 1, which is what we want. So let's begin styling the document. So we already have a few styles which we needed for the table of contents. So we've got these headings, and if I switch to paragraph styles, we can have a preview. I will also switch to applied styles. So all we have are these headings, these 3 levels of headings for the part titles, for the individual tenses, and for these sections with forms and uses. So this is level 3. But apart from that, we don't really have any styles here applied. There are a few styles created, but if I select part of the text and I press Ctrl M, which of course does the same as this menu item, Clear Direct Formatting, Ctrl M, you can see what happens. The font changes, the spacing changes. So I'm going to undo that. So we want to have at least a few styles for this content. I will start with the table, because if I select the table and again press Ctrl M, you can see that it doesn't change dramatically, but the font changes. Also this italic styling changes. So we want to have styling here as well. Okay. So what we're going to do, first we want to apply a style to these headings. So there is actually a style called table heading, which we can't see here because it's not applied anywhere. So if I select all styles and look at the table styles, you can see I've got table heading here. So let's apply that. And you can see that it changes. Of course, we can modify it later. But if you want to apply it to all the headings in all the tables, and we don't want to actually go to each table and select the header and apply the style, of course we can use some search functions. So I'm going to undo that because we're going to rely on the manual formatting that we have. So you can see that the style now is the default style, so no special styling is applied. So what is special about this heading? It's got this font Ubuntu Lite, which I think is perhaps not even installed. So it's just replaced by some other font. So that's all the more reason to modify this. So we can't rely on that, but we can rely on the size and the style, the italic style. So we've got size 10.5 and we've got italics. So let's press Ctrl H, and in the format settings here we can select italic and 10.5 points. Okay, and find all. And you can see that all these headings are selected. However, there is also some other text that has these features. So you can see that some sentences have been selected here. Possibly that might be the only place where this has happened. Let me just close that for a moment and quickly scan the document. There is another word here. For some reason it's got this size. And if I go to the beginning, because I don't think I started at the beginning. Right, so we have a few sentences and we could of course just apply the style. And then we will be changing the style of the text anyway. So that would be a sensible thing to do, I think. There is a way, however, that we can actually limit this selection. And I'm going to show it to you, although it's a bit advanced. So I can just show it to you so that you see what powerful features there are in this application. So I'm going to deselect that and go to Ctrl H again. Okay, so I'm still keeping this formatting because we want to stick to that. Although it might not even be necessary because I'm actually going to look for this content. Because obviously all of these tables contain this content, right? But I don't think we can just select it and look for it because they are placed in separate cells of a table. So that wouldn't necessarily work, right? So if I paste the text here, you can see that this is just continuous text with no spaces, no tabs. So that won't work. Right? So that was the previous selection. But now if I just trying to find all, that obviously won't work because it's just like one word consisting of these 4 or 5 words together. So what we have to do is we have to select for each instance of these words, because if I select affirmative, for example, and Ctrl V and find all, obviously all of these would be found, right? So I could do it one by one, but that of course would be quite time consuming. And the idea is to actually do it automatically and as fast as possible. So here's where the regular expressions come into play. So regular expressions allow you to use different patterns, different symbols to find certain words or phrases or certain patterns, basically. Because so in this case, if I want to select or to find any of these words, so I want to select all of these words, and so on. So basically, if it finds any of these words, it should be selected, right? So I can select or tick this regular expressions item, and here I will just use an OR operator. OR, right? But actually the symbol for that is this, I think it's called the pipe symbol. It's this vertical line that is found above the enter or around the enter key, right? So you don't put any spaces here, just this pipe symbol, and then you just type the next word that you're going to look for, right? So you should find, or you should select affirmative or negative. That's the wrong symbol. Interrogative and short answer. Okay, so now if I do find all, you can see that it has found all of these. Okay, and only these, of course, because we specified the actual words. So of course, in this situation, we wouldn't even need this formatting option, because there is no other place in the document where these words occur. Well, actually, I might be wrong here. So let's just give it a try, because it's just going to look for any of these. It's not looking for all of them at once together, right? That's why we use these OR symbols and not AND symbols. So if I do no format, it might actually find some more like here, right? So you can see the difference. So we actually do need the formatting. Okay, so find all, and we have just these. Okay, so now we can apply that style. So we want the table heading style to be applied. And here it is. Okay, it's not going to be that easy with these forms, with the table contents. And the reason is the fact that, well, there is no special formatting here, right? It's this Ubuntu font size 11, which is which occurs in other parts of the document. So, for example, this is 10.5, but there are parts of the document where this size actually is used. So if we rely just on the size and the font, we won't be able to find it, or we won't be able to just limit the selection. So let me just give it a try. So that was 11, regular, because we don't want any bold or italic text. Right, so you can see that large parts of the document have this style. And again, we could just apply this style to all of that, because we will be applying a different style to all these sections. So in this situation it might work, but you can see that the problem is that even the table contents are not consistent. So for example, here the size is 10.5, so we can't really rely on that. So that's why we will probably just have to do it manually, which means going to each table and applying that style. There is a feature. If you look here on the right, you've got the styles, you've got a gallery, but you also have a navigator. And if you want to go to a given element, like a table, quickly, you can just use this navigator. So if I want to go to table 2, which is actually the first table, I think, in the document. Yes, it's the first table. So these are arranged in the order in which they occur in the document. So, of course, this first one has been not selected, but we have been taken to this table, and we can the problem is that we would have to switch between these buttons, so I think it's not it doesn't give us a big advantage. So I think perhaps the easiest way to do it is just to select each of these and apply the table content style, which we can modify later. Okay, so I'm going to show applied styles here, and I'm going to just go quickly over the whole document and apply this style. Okay, and we have this table in the passive voice section. And this table is slightly different because it has no heading. So we will apply a different style to it. So we'll worry about that later. So the reason I applied these paragraph styles to the tables is because we want to have control over the appearance of the text in those tables. However, there are also so-called table styles, and they work slightly differently. So I'm going to demonstrate by going to the first table. So I don't have to select it. I could select the whole table, but it's enough if the cursor is inside the table. And here at the top on the right, you've got all these styles, and you may have noticed that we also have table styles. That's the last item. Okay, we don't see anything because we need to change the view from applied styles to all styles, because no styles are currently applied. And you can see we've got a few styles that come with LibreOffice, and you cannot modify these styles, you can only hide them. And you can create new styles from selection, for example. And that's actually how you can modify some of these styles, because you can replace these styles with your own settings, basically. So that works a little strangely. It's not very consistent because it works differently from the other styles. But let's see how it works. So I'm going to select one of these styles. You can actually switch between them and see how they look. So if I double click, you can see how this changes. We've got different colors, different styles. We've got the default style, which is this basic simple style. We have this elegant style, financial. Some of these have different formatting for the heading. So just for the first row. So if you actually have a heading, like we do here, that's convenient. But they also have some special formatting for the last row, like this financial style, because the assumption is that this is the last row where you have all the sums when you're dealing with numbers, for example. Right? We have some styles where the shading for the columns, we have different shadings for different columns, or for different rows, right? So you have this pattern where one column or one row is has no shading and the other row has some shading, right? So we're going to use this elegant style actually. and we're going to make some changes to it. Okay. So we have the table style and we have the paragraph styles inside here, right? So I can still work with this. I can make modifications here, but the overall look will be controlled by this table style. Okay, so we actually need to repeat the whole process of applying these table styles, unfortunately. There is no way in LibreOffice to just select all the tables, which is a shame perhaps, but that's what it is. So this shouldn't take too long, especially as we don't have to actually select the table. We can just put the cursor inside and double click. Okay, and we'll leave this one alone. Let's see if we have anything at the beginning. No, we started with the first page, so that's okay. So now let's so as I said, we cannot just modify this style, but what you can do is to select the table and create a new style from selection. Okay, so that's one possibility. But then we would just create a new style and we would have to apply it again. So the other possibility is just to make some changes here and then update the selected style. So let's see if that will work. So what we need to do is, I think it's enough to have the cursor inside the table, or we could select the whole table, and then we've got table properties. So you can find them here if you have this toolbar, or you can just right click and the last item is table properties. Okay, so you can change, for example, the spacing above and below the table, and we will probably need to do that, but we do not see the problem here, but it will appear later. What we're interested in is borders and backgrounds. So we want to have some more spacing around these, the text, basically, the contents. So we want some padding. So let's have just 10 millimeters. Okay, and that looks better. The content seems to spill over, but let's also make some changes to the heading here. So we're just changing the table properties manually at this point. And let's have a background. So let's have a color, maybe some kind of bluish, very light color. And you can see that this has changed the color. Maybe we don't necessarily want this to be shaded. So again, we can decide to have none. Okay. Right, so let's see if this will be applied to all the tables. So if I select this and go to update selected style, and this hasn't worked. For some reason. So you can see that it's not automatically applied. So probably it's a better way to actually first style one table. So do all the changes, and then update or create a new style. And after that, apply the style to all the tables. Because apparently this is not updated, despite the fact that this elegant style is actually selected and it seems that it's applied, but it looks like we need to reapply it. So let me just apply it to each table. Okay, so all the tables are styled. So unfortunately, we don't have all that control over these table styles, because if I wanted to change that, I would have to basically just change one table, update the style so that it contains that new styling, that new information, and then I would have to go to all the tables again to change the styling. However, we should still have control over the paragraph styling in these tables. So if I go to paragraph styles and select applied styles here, we've got these table contents applied. We have the headings. So let's start with the heading and modify the style a little bit. So let's have so we have this Ubuntu font. Let's have bold italic. And it doesn't quite seem to work. Right, let's see. Yeah, so that's the problem with tables. You should first apply paragraph styles. So basically that's how we would work. You would first apply the character styles and modify them and format them properly. Then you would apply a table style or just format one table and create a table style or update a table style based on that table. And then you would have to apply this table style to each table. So it's far from ideal, admittedly, but that's how it works. Okay, so since I've got these styles reapplied, I can modify, for example, the table heading style, because I would like it to be aligned to the left, the way it used to be. Okay, so let's now deal with the rest of the text. So we're going to apply a style to the individual uses, and we will probably need separate styles for these examples, possibly also these explanations and the notes. But if we want to keep the same font the way it is now, you can see that these individual paragraphs are pretty similar. So they have the same font. Some of them are italicized, some of them are not. The size is similar. So it's 12 here. There are some differences. For example, the notes have a slightly smaller font. It's not entirely consistent. So some parts, for example, some of the uses have a smaller font because I wanted them to stay on one page. For example, if there was a lot of content. We should start with a basic style that will apply to everything. So all the content basically, apart from the tables and the headings. And then based on that, we'll create some more styles, which will inherit some properties from this basic uses style. So let's create a style called uses, because we want to have a style for these individual uses. Currently, if I select part of the text and press Ctrl M, we go back to this, right? So we don't want to remove that formatting, because then we would lose track of what is what, and we would lose a lot of information, like these highlighted parts and so on, and also the settings of the font, because basically we want to keep these settings. I mean, the font, the size, the spacing, more or less. So the way to do it is to select part of the text. So we could select, for example, let me look for part of text that is relatively uniform. So for example, here, let me select a few uses, and after selecting that, I can go here and create a new style from selection. I could also update the selected style, but that would update the default style. And I want to create a new style which will be called uses. Right, so I'm going to call this style uses. Right, I want a capital U here. Okay, so I have this style. I'll make sure that it's applied. And you can see that it actually, because most of this text was italicized, it actually italicized everything. So the style has italics in it. So we can remove that. So let's use the regular font. And of course, everything changes. And of course, we can see that these are examples. So we will create a new style for them later on. Okay, so obviously, if I now select most of this text here and press Ctrl M, you can see that part of it goes back to the default style. But for this part of the text, the new style has been applied. So now all we need to do is to apply this new style to basically everything except from these headings and tables. So probably we'll need to do it page by page, because it's hard to just select everything with the exception of these parts. I mean, you could do it, but that could prove tricky and unreliable, because you would never be sure what actually got selected. So okay, so let's just apply this to everything, and you can see that not that much changes because it's the same font. And the strange thing is that actually some of this formatting, or these bold parts and some of the italics are actually left, so they remain. When I press Ctrl M, this actually gets removed, although we still have some bold text, which is bizarre. So that's a bit unpredictable. But anyway, let's just keep on working. Right, so we reach this point, and there are some formatting issues here because we have some extra lines. So there are actually lines that have been put here. Of course, in reality, we should use paragraph borders for this kind of effect. So I'm going to leave these lines just for reference, so that I see what the intended look is. there is an extra line here, but perhaps I'll leave it for the time being. Okay, and I have to be careful because I might accidentally select these uses, right? This has to stay, this has to be heading 3. That's what we did before. So I should only select those parts that actually should be affected. Okay, so this one. So we are losing some formatting. So we just have to put that back in. You can also see that there is a very small, almost no gap between these uses and the table. So we could either change the style or modify the style for the uses so that there is some spacing above it. But then, of course, these would be affected. So the forms as well, because it's the same style. Another way to do it would be to change. We have the same problem here. So probably we can't, because we could just change the properties of the table, but then we would obviously have to do it separately for each table. Because we have this spacing here, which we can set, and you can see that it works, but it only works for this particular table. So I think it makes more sense to actually add some spacing above those individual uses. I mean those uses sections. And you can see that we have some other fonts here. And actually this font is not installed, so it's replacing it with a different font. It doesn't look very consistent. So if we apply this style to everything, then it will become more consistent, and then we can make all the changes that we need. Okay, so now we'll create a new style for the examples, which will be based on this uses style. Okay, so we have to ignore these examples because they are part of the same paragraph. So they are still formatted properly. So there's no problem with that. Of course, if I pressed Ctrl M, this would break it. But we can leave that manual formatting, or we could create character style for such examples as that. But I think we can leave it for now, and let's focus on paragraph styles. So we're interested in this type of content. So we're going to create a new one based on the uses style. And this one will be italic. And it will be called examples. Right, and we don't see it because it's not been applied. Right, so nothing changes because the italics are already there, and it doesn't seem to affect those bold words, so that's good. Right, so now that we have our example style, we can apply it to all the examples. Okay, so I'm going to add a style for the notes as well, and then we'll call it a day. So there are these notes in at the end of many sections, or sometimes in the middle. You can see that some content spills over to the next page. So if we don't want that, then we would probably need to perhaps change some formatting manually a little bit. Just make the font a little smaller in a given section. For example, these examples could use size 11. That hasn't changed that much. Maybe this explanation here, and we're fine. Okay, and let me look for those notes, right? So let's look at the notes, and I'm going to create a new style based on the uses style. We'll call it notes, and just to make sure that we can see it in action, we'll make it a smaller font, like 10.5, and I'll immediately apply it. And of course that doesn't apply it to this selected text. So again, I need to show all the styles, and I've got this notes style here. Okay, and to make it stand out, I'm going to give it a background. So let's have a subtle yellowish color. And I'm also going to add some padding so that it doesn't look so uninteresting. So this is in the borders tab, and you can add some padding here. Perhaps 10 millimeters is enough. And we want to avoid those extra lines, so let's add some spacing above, some more spacing. Right, so now we can apply it to all these notes. we have this indentation here. That doesn't look ideal, but I'm going to leave it because we have no time. There surely is a way around it. Okay, so no notes here. And we have these extra lines which we should really deal with. Yeah, so we should probably add some more spacing above these heading 2 elements. But that can move the content where we have, oh, it's already done it. Right, so you can see that some content spills over. Okay, so I think that's it for the notes. Right, so of course there's quite a lot more to do to actually have this document look and behave the way I want it to, but we're running out of time and I don't want to bore you to death with these with this styling. So you get the idea, you know the process. A lot of it is experimentation. Some of the features don't work perfectly, but ideally the document should be fully styled and you should have as much control as possible over the styling so that you can change it any way you want.